Okay, so this morning I'm going to talk about the light of Christ. And once again, this talk is from, as it has been all month, from the Teachings of Christ by Torkham. So today is our Christmas service. Yesterday was New Year's for 2012. I have never seen a year go so quickly. Maybe it's my age, or maybe it's just the rotation of the earth is speeding up, or maybe I was anxious to see what was going to happen on the 21st and nothing really did. But actually that's not true. If you are at all sensitive to energy, you know that we have been just experiencing this outflow of energy from hierarchy, from cosmos, from so many sources, trying to keep our balance on a day-to-day level has been a wonderful challenge. Physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual balance. I think it's like a wake-up call for all of us, needing to choose our priorities very carefully, make our decisions wisely, and then take action on the priorities and the decisions. I think the benefit of all of this energy is wisdom, because from it we can find wisdom. The most important point in this celebration, of course, is the birth of Christ. But to realize that in each of us is a Christ nature. If we can just remember this in making our decisions, in creating our priorities, in manifesting our day-to-day life, to remember that within you, within me, within us, there is a Christ nature. I think it changes our whole perspective and approach to life. So I think this is a very fundamental idea, and that this is an idea that we need to repeat to ourselves and think about and even meditate upon it. Because in so doing, what happens is that we have planted a seed. If this is the first time you've heard the idea that the Christ nature is within us, then you are planting the seed today. But if you have studied and thought about this idea for many, many years, then today is the day we are nurturing it. It's like we're going out to the garden and we've got the best fertilizer that money can buy, and that we have found a new way to fertilize, not the seed, because by now the seed has been nurtured for so many years. It is grown into this beautiful blossoming tree. And we just have to keep it nurtured. So the fertilizer for us would be meditation. It would be striving. It would be the practice of goodwill and the realization every day that we have within ourselves the nature of Christ. So this tells us that within each of us is a great potential, right? A great potential. Now, we as an individual, we as a humanity have this potential, but the irony of it is that humanity is living in a very backward evolution. We are going to awaken that nature. That's what's important to us as we celebrate the birth of Christ and we celebrate Christmas, is that we are going to awaken this Christ nature within ourselves, within our family, within our friends, and within the world, to bring it back so that one day the Christ nature, that divine nature, is going to shine out. All else is vanity. All else that we do, that we engage in, is a waste of time. If the Christ nature does not manifest through us, then all that we are doing, all that we are talking, all that we are thinking, will all be actions and words that are working against our survival. So when are you going to really believe this? When are we going to remember this? I really believe that as we awaken this Christ nature within and continue to nurture it, that our lives undergo a tremendous transformation. We'll no longer be speaking from the lower nature, from the glamours and from illusions and mimicking and imitating the past. But now we're going to live our potential, all these great potentials that the teaching says that we as a world, that we as a humanity, that we as individuals have the possibility of manifesting. So as Christmas is nearly upon us, we want to charge our souls with the energy of Christ, with the light of Christ. And that is the title of this morning's talk. It is the light of Christ. We can imagine that millions of people all over the world are thinking about Christmas now, in the next few days, and certainly Tuesday. In fact, it doesn't really make any difference to think about how they're thinking about Christmas, whether they're thinking about it the same way that we are, or differently from what we are thinking. It doesn't matter. As they are thinking about Christmas, a magical performance takes place. And what is happening is, by thinking about Christmas, thinking about Christ, they are linking up to the Christ. So you see, that's why it doesn't make any difference how they're thinking about Christmas. In fact, they are really linking up with this great one, linking their heart with the heart of the great one. To think that that great being is sending his blessing and his energy to every single human being that is trying to link with him it's just a magnificent image, a magnificent realization. To realize that Christ is just like an electrical power station. But all we have to do is build a wire to that station, and we're going to receive the power from Christ. That is what we're going to try to do. So we're going to try to create a communication line between the Great One and ourselves, so that eventually and gradually that our entire nature is changed. You know, some people will say, well, why should my nature change? Well, only you can answer that question. If we have potential, why do we have potential? If it isn't to realize it, to surpass ourselves, to unfold all that we are told that we can be. Greater things can you do than me. But we have to create a communication line between that great one and ourselves, so that eventually and gradually our nature is going to change. So don't come to me and say, have I changed? Or do you really think I need to change? Or will you love me even if I don't change? These are all questions you have to answer for yourself, right? Yeah. If we fuse ourselves with that energy, we are going to see changes in our life. There's no doubt. Now, at first, we're not going to feel it. At first, we are not going to feel it. We're going to play with it a little bit, and we're going to say, well, it's good, but I don't believe it. I mean, I like the idea. I listen to this talk, and I hear the talk, and I hear what she's saying, and yeah, okay, I sort of like the idea, and maybe. It's possible. That's okay. But continue to direct yourself to that source. Building that electrical wire, that link to the Christ, is the way we do it is through thinking about the Christ, thinking about hierarchy, meditating, concentrating, contemplating this beautiful light. And eventually you're going to see something, and that something that you're going to see is that within you is a new light, the Christ light. And as that light increases, you're going to see what needs to be changed in your life. Now, this is why you don't need therapy at this point. You've got the wisdom. You have the answers within you. You can read the teaching, study the teaching, you can meditate, and you can strive into the future by working on yourself and trying to experience and understand what it means to transform yourself. In this process, you will see a new light born within you, and you're going to see your life changing. That light energy, that love energy, that power energy coming from Christ is, how is this happening? It's from the linkage. It's not your will, it's His will. You have to give up your personal willfulness and link to that greater will, the will of God. Once we come in contact with His light, we're going to see many light years. We will see how many light years we need to expand toward His being. So don't worry about things like, I guess I'm going to have to worry about vanity now because I'm linked with the Christ. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. It's not going to make us full of vanity thinking that we have become something, because if you've had this experience that you take this step forward because you've worked 100 years to take this one step forward, you realize, oh my gosh, I have light years ahead of me to expand toward His being. See, so as we come closer and closer and closer to the Christ, our humility increases. So Christ is a model, and we want to become like Him. So what does this mean to us? One day a great Hindu poet, Rabindranath Tagore, received a letter from the United States. It said, this letter from the United States said, we have lots of preachers here. If you need any in Bengal, we will send them so that they will start forming churches and institutions for you. So Tagore received the letter and he wrote back and he said this: if you have a Christ or a few Christs, send them. He said, I don't need preachers here. So he wanted to say something very deep. If a man knows what the Christ is, it doesn't help. He must be like Him so that the Christ manifests through him. This is what happens in my life anyway with esotericists. When we come together and counsel one another, and I'll say, why don't you try this, or suggest this or that. Well, I already know that. Then why aren't you doing it? See, why aren't we being it? That's the point. You may remember in all of Christ's teachings, He said, what? I am the light of the world. Then he said something very exciting. He said, "You are the light of the world." Then he linked these two lights. See the connection? By saying, "My Father is the Father of lights." So there is nothing else except that great light, that light and our lights. The only secret is to find a way to link these lights so that the installation of your electricity is complete. And you have the shining light within your nature. See, it's something that I've discovered is that when you are trying to link your light with yourself is when ego and vanity becomes rampant. When you try to connect, you're building that electrical station or that electrical line to the greater light, that's when you have humility. You get that? Okay. So I have 7 points to make here. This is the first point. What is the first light that Christ taught in his lectures? These 7 points are so simple, and you're going to say, I can't believe that I've not paid attention. But we are this morning. So this first light is the light of discrimination. This is one of the first lights that Christ taught in his lecture, is discrimination. Real discriminating light comes from the higher mind. If we are using discrimination from the lower mind, then it becomes selfish and opinionated and self-involved. If discrimination is truly part of our consciousness, then it is that light that hits, that beam of light that hits the higher mind. And in that light, we become discriminative. We see things as they are. And that is truly discrimination. Discrimination lets us know what thoughts are that are going to lead us to our goal and what thoughts are going to prevent us from reaching that goal. Discrimination will teach us what to read and what not to read. You see, it's not a body of people or a church or a nation that will say, you can't read this, you can't do that. It is that first light that Christ taught. It's discrimination. When the light of Christ reaches the higher mind, that's when we will see things as they are. Discrimination will show us what path is taking us toward our target and which path is taking us away from the target. So before you open your mouth, you can ask, are these words right or wrong? Before you post on your Facebook, ask yourself, are my words right or wrong? Or this, when you are in a sacred space, let's say our sanctuary here, are you acting obnoxious with your words? Are you making loud noises? Are you talking loudly? Are you drawing attention to yourself? Or are you respectful, beautiful, radiant, and refined? Are your behaviors such that the light of discrimination is in operation? Why refinement? Think about the word refinement, because refinement is part of transformation. I don't have time to go into it, but it would be an interesting discussion to talk about the power of refinement. So the first light is discrimination. If we start putting discrimination into action, we will see that the light is increasing in us. The second light is the light of love. Love is an intense light that reveals things. So for example, you have an enemy. Now, if you've never tried this, then all you're doing is hearing words, but these words are very powerful. The idea is very powerful. And it is a challenge to you to try to truly experience it and apply it. If you have an enemy, you can know your enemy only by loving that person. See, if you haven't tried this, it won't make sense. You'll try to, look at it intellectually or logically. But if you mix love, the light of love, in what you're doing, that's when you're going to get to know your enemy. Love will expose exactly what he is. Isn't this interesting? Love will expose exactly what he is or she is. Sometimes you will be horrified to find that he was the greatest friend that you ever had. And you never saw it because of your negative emotions. It is so interesting. Now, the third light is purity. If you read his teaching really clearly, you will see that this light is so strong. Never can we do real and good things without having that light in our mind, in our emotions, and in our actions. Isn't this simple to hear? We don't have to have Webster's next to us, that little, defining book. It says how to do this. This is so clear. Darkness cannot conquer one thing. Darkness cannot conquer purity. Purity is the greatest strength and power in the world. For example, when you think about Christ, you will find that nobody, as you study the whole history of his life, you will learn that nobody could conquer him in spite of the crucifixion, in spite of all the hatred and the ignorance and the denials. Nobody could conquer him, the denials of who he was. Nobody could conquer him because he is so pure. A computer person came to see Torkim one day. He was Chinese. He said that he was an expert in computers. T said, "Well, do you know about Christ?" "Well, what does Christ have to do with computers?" says the Chinese man. "Well," T said, "I will tell you a secret. Think about him, knock on the door, and ask him things that you don't know yet." Well, okay. So he called Torkim later and he said, "Torkim, I found an answer to one of the most complex questions. It was so magnificent." And Torkim said, "That's what we're talking about." Love him more, but equally love the human beings in whom the Christ nature exists. Let me repeat this. Love him more, but equally love the human beings in whom the Christ nature exists. And you will see how the doors will open. So we have these beautiful paintings on the wall. The one of Saint Sergius and the other of the Mother of the World. These are images to remind us of what happens with those who love him more. And for us to love those in whom the Christ nature exists. The opposite of that would be what? It would be dwelling on the negative. Focusing on hatred and anger and jealousy and wanting to take revenge. Because then that makes us dark. It gives the forces of hatred control over us. The forces of anger control over us, and so forth. So let us love the human beings in whom the Christ nature exists. Our civilization, with all of our achievements, is about 50,000 years behind because of our hatred and because we have not recognized the power, the source of knowledge that is ready to give us secrets by which we can proceed. So purity is the third light. The fourth one is the light of awareness that comes from contact with God. It is so strange. As we have greater contact with God, we have an awareness that is so strong that it penetrates any phenomenon here on earth. Anything that is going on in your daily life, people who are trying to scare the bejeebers out of you, it doesn't work. It may work temporarily, but when you reconnect that connection, that connector, you have an awareness that's so strong that it penetrates through any fear. It reveals to you the secrets, the sciences, the knowledge, the way that things are done or will be done. It is a strange light. Christ has that light, and he said, I and my Father are one. It is the oneness that creates this radioactivity, this contact. So the fifth light is the light of intuition. Intuition is instantaneous realization of the one life. It is not a hunch. Now think about this. It's not a hunch. It is not a feeling. It's not even an awareness. It is instantaneous realization. You will remember this when you have that experience of instantaneous realization. It is not going up to a person and saying, I have a feeling. Okay. It is an absolute instantaneous realization, and that's intuition. In the realization, you know that you are, in that realization, you know that you are one with him, and he is in you, and that you and he are one. If you have that realization for 1 second, you will be powerful in any condition. You can do almost anything with that realization. So to get this intuitional light in operation, we must come in contact with him. The boy is standing there and he says, I am a candle. Or you can put yourself there, I am a candle. But there's something missing. I wish I had a candle here. And what is missing? There's no light. So your candle is the candle is your potential. The light is the realization. Come here, relight the candle, now he has a light. And that's what the teaching is doing. It is lighting our candle. Meditation is lighting our candle. Devoting ourselves to those who have the Christ light or flame going within them is what? We begin to realize our potential. Some of us have a flame, some of us do not have a flame. Who are those who have flame? This will maybe surprise you. They are those who have the light from another candle. See how powerful that is? When you have the light from another candle, you have humility. You have wisdom. You have greatness. It's when you say, I don't need another's light. I am a light unto myself. That the wind comes and the light is extinguished. Those who have the flame are those who have the light from another candle. They have made a contact with the heart of their teacher, with the heart of the ashram, their master, and eventually Christ. So the light of intuition can be developed only with intense worship and dedication and devotion until you feel that you are one with Him. I wish I could get the point across here that it's not pretending. It is not us pretending to be somebody or something special. It is not trying to convince somebody how powerful I am or how intelligent I am or how much I know. It's not that at all, because when you become radioactive, it's just understood. Because you are powerful. You are wise. You are loving. It's when you are trying to pretend to be these things that it gets you in a lot of trouble. The sixth one, the next one, 607, is the light of the will. If you are against the law, when you think of will as being the law, okay? When you are against the law, you are weak. If you are for the law, then you are strong. The law is the expression of the will or the divine will. If you are with the divine will, you have the light, you have the perception, you have the intuition, you have the understanding, you have the realization, and you have the awareness. When you are in sync with the divine will, everything you have, you are strong because you have the light of the will. You can test it on yourself. If you are the will of God, nothing can defeat you. If you are far away from that will, then everything can defeat you. And this is why. Because the greatest defeater is yourself. You defeat yourself. And the seventh light is to see Christ in every human being. To see His presence in every human being. So how do we do that? Instead, most people say, well, this is my religion, this is my tradition, this is my country, and that is your country, and that is your business, and so on and so forth. This is my family, this is your family. This is your mother-in-law, it's part of your family. And so forth. But this is so wrong. We haven't learned yet our lesson to recognize the divinity within each other. Do we see the divinity in our children, within our spouse, within our mother-in-law? Do we recognize the divinity within each other? This doesn't mean that we are becoming Mr. or Miss or Ms. Goody Two-Shoes, or that we will swallow every pill that they are giving, or that we're going to let them misuse and manipulate us. Not at all. That's not reality. Seeing the presence is seeing the Christ potentiality. You hear that? It is seeing the Christ potentiality in that human being and making efforts. Here's where our work comes in. is to making efforts to release that potential so that we have another Christ person by us. Isn't that beautiful? And that's the end. It went by very quickly, didn't it? So that's the Christmas message for today. Now we're going to have Holy Communion. Let me speak briefly about this symbolic message that Holy Communion has for us. Symbolically, the bread and the wine are the body and the consciousness of Christ. We take the Christ inside to remind ourselves that we must produce our own baby Christ within us, our own Christ baby within us. It is an impressive ceremony to make us realize that unless we are born again, we cannot inherit the kingdom of God, which means higher levels of consciousness, higher levels of joy, and higher levels of beauty. The kingdom is, this is so interesting, the kingdom of God is not a place where a king is sitting and people are killing one another right and left. It is not a kingdom. That is not a kingdom. The kingdom of Christ is that level of consciousness where the light, and there is light and beauty and great joy and bliss and peace. That's the kingdom of God. And that is what we are going to aspire to. So taking Holy Communion is a reminder to us to make an effort so that we can find a new life within ourselves. Merry Christmas.